Andrew requested me on Patreon to review the movie Thelma Louise. Released in 1991, directed by Ridley Scott, this film is viewed as a major female empowerment story that focuses on two women who suddenly become fugitives. In the beginning of the movie, it appears like this will be a road trip comedy involving these two women, Louise, who is confident and smart, and Thelma, who is a bit more on the ditzy side. However, things immediately take a turn, and the tone becomes more serious. The movie does a good job of showing how they react to this event and change over the course of this car trip. Of the two, Thelma is given the most development as she becomes more serious and willing to go to certain places, and Geena Davis able to successfully show that through her performance. Both Davis and Susan Sarandon were nominated for Best Actress, and viewers have a preference for one over the other. Sarandon is good in the role, but I think it's Davis who really shines here. Thelma is a multi-layered character, and she's able to subtly and gradually show her transformation over the film's 2 hours. Regarding the female empowerment message, it's definitely a comment on the dangers faced by women, and through these characters we see a pair of women who have to make quick decisions to avoid these. The film is interpreted by some in its original release as being anti-men, sort of like what happened to Barbie last year. And yes, there are some bad men in this film, but we also see characters like Louise's boyfriend Jimmy, who is depicted as supportive and understanding for her, and a generally good person. Even the lead detective trying to locate them is not depicted as an antagonist towards Thelma Louise, and is even sympathetic towards them. It's easy to understand the FBI's point of view as they try to locate these two women who have suddenly fled after murder and then later rob a convenience store. We, the audience, know why Louise shot a man in a parking lot, but most people who are not there, regardless of gender, would assume that they've turned into criminals. There's also a scene where Thelma pulls a gun on a policeman and he turns into a wreck, pleading for her not to kill him. A sharp contrast from a truck driver a few scenes earlier who responds with obscenities when they confront and embarrass him. A few other characters manage to stand out in the movie. One is Thelma's husband, Daryl, played by Christopher McDonald, who's one of those character actors who often makes a memorable impression. He does a particularly good job of playing frequently frustrated characters, and we definitely see a lot of that with Daryl. We see in his early scenes that he's not a particularly good husband, and how going on the road with Louise then helps Thelma free herself of him. He gets a few humorous scenes with Detective Hal and the other FBI officers, including a hilarious bit where they're all watching television together. Thelma Louise is also notable for featuring Brad Pitt's breakout role as a robber who briefly tags along with the duo. It's easy to see why he quickly became a big star. He comes in with a lot of charisma, and even when you think he's out of the movie, he pops back in again. In addition to his scenes with Davis, he has a particularly good scene with Harvey Keitel as Hal interrogates him. I also want to shout out Stephen Tobolowsky, who most will recognize for his role as Ned Ryerson in Groundhog Day, and it's always good to see him in something. In Thelma Louise, he shares some solid moments with Keitel as he helps him in the investigation. Something that often surprises people about Thelma Louise is that it was directed by Ridley Scott. He is primarily known for his historical epics and science fiction movies, but he has done other kinds of movies too. One I have a fondness for is the comedy Matchstick Men, which is a delightful caper I think deserves more attention. So I don't find it unusual he directed this movie, and Scott does a good job of balancing the dramatic scenes with the comedic moments and the action. He has a genuine interest in these characters and showing their progression as events escalate. One of the most talked about aspects of the film is the ending, so I'll be going into spoilers for this over 30-year-old movie, although the last scene is one of the most famous parts and has been parodied a lot, from The Simpsons to Robot Chicken. The movie ends with Thelma Louise driving into the Grand Canyon to their probable deaths. Why would they do that? After all, I think they would have had a reduced sentence and probably gone off lightly, especially with Detective Hal being sympathetic towards them. However, I think they were just sick of everything they dealt with over the last few days, and despite Hal's reassuring telephone calls, they did not entirely know whether he was on their side or not. They view the world as an unforgiving one, which would just see them as criminals and not understand everything that led to that point in their lives. That's my personal interpretation anyway. It's interesting that in the beginning of the movie, Thelma Louise seem like fairly one-dimensional characters, and there's nothing that special about them. However, Scott and screenwriter Callie Curry, along with Davis and Sarandon, were able to peel back their layers and show how these events morph them. Overall, I do think this is a well-made and engaging film with a number of thought-provoking themes, and becomes a sadder story than one expects. Now, if you've seen Thelma Louise, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for the request, Andrew.